So we'll discuss tonight about Parshas Vayikra, actually Sefer Vayikra. That this week we begin the third book of Moses, Parshas Sefer Vayikra. We know we've read Bereshis and we finished off Shmos last week, and there's Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Dvarim. However, Chazal, our rabbis, give us special names for these books. So Bereshis is the book of Sefer HaYetzirah, the book of creation. We learned the potential. Sefer Shmos is Sefer Golus V'Geula, the book of exile and redemption. Yetzias Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, Exodus from Egypt, receiving the Torah, and the stories of the Mishkan. And now we begin the book of Vayikra, which is known as Torah's Kohanim, the book about the laws of the Kohanim. So many of at least the beginning of the Sefer, deals with all the different types of karbanos, and we do talk about Kohanim as well, Parshas Emor. But especially the beginning of the book and throughout, it's known as the book of Torah's Kohanim. So since we're going to be dealing with, in the beginning of Vayikra and Tzav, many different karbanos, so instead of going into a specific karban now, maybe we'll go into it in another class later. There's some general idea behind the purpose of karbanos. The tachlis ha-karbanos, the purpose of why we bring, or why we did bring karbanos. So there's a famous Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, and the Ramban in Vayikra quotes the Rambam as well. The different versions of the Rambam. But the way the Ramban brings this Rambam in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Tes, 1:9, he says, Shetam har-karbanos k'dei laharchek es Klal Yisrael me'avodah zarah. The purpose of karbanos is to take the Jewish people away from avodah zarah. That's the general theme we'll find with the Rambam in Sefer Vayikra and other places. Many things were done k'dei laharchek es adam min ha'avodah zarah, to keep the Jews away from idol worship. Because he writes, Ki b'artza shagaru sham, in the lands where they used to live, when they were surrounded by the Goyim, they used to worship the animals. L'chein tziva Hashem lishchot haminam ha'elu. Therefore God commanded us to slaughter these species, u'hakrivam, and to bring them as a karban, k'dei laharo shebehemas hayu makrivam lahem heim ba'atzman nikrava. So you see these same animals that people are worshiping, you'll see that they're killed in the service of God. And this, the sins of avodah zarah will be forgiven. So the way the Ramban quotes the Rambam is that those are the animals that they were worshipped in the surrounding lands, and therefore he picked those karbanos to keep them away from avodah zarah and to get them closer to God. So as the Abarbanel writes, a little differently in the Das HaRambam, Haminag ha'mafersim ba'olam bizmanahu, the public practice was that they used to bring sacrifices, animals, to their gods. So therefore, basically, God didn't expect the Jews to go cold turkey and stop doing it completely. So if they're worshipping idols by bringing karbanos to the avodah zarah, so therefore, keep what they used to, except redirect it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's v'sivasam lasosam l'shma. Do it for the sake of the cause. Ba'ofen hazeh ye'ev shalakar es rigshe avodah zarah v'avos b'nei. That's how we get them out of the heart. So basically, different versions of the Rambam, the Ramban's version, the Abarbanel, but they have the common theme that it was to get the Jews away from idols. That was the purpose of karbanos. So the Ramban himself, who quotes the Rambam, says the Rambam's words are a big wonder. It's very difficult to say that the purpose of sacrifices, bringing sacrifices, is to take one away from Avodah Zarah. Because why is that very difficult? Because we find many times in the Torah, we find it says about the sacrifices, Ishei Reach Nichoach LaHashem. It's whatever that means exactly, but it's a good smell to Hashem. But for our purposes, it's mashma sheyesh lem tachlis me'ula. There's an inherent purpose behind it. It's not just to wean one away from idol worship, but from the words goreach nichoach, it seems to be it's more of a positive aspect. V'od, if that's true, what the Rambam is saying, that the purpose of bringing karbanos is to take the Jews away from Avodah Zarah, if that's true, then we shouldn't started to bring karbanos until after we had the Yetzirah for Avodah Zarah, until there actually was Avodah Zarah. And therefore that's what the Rambam writes. When Hevel brought a carbon, the Hevel Hevi Gamhu, there wasn't any real Avodah Zarah around, so therefore the Ramban says Q1 it's Reach Nichoach, implies its inherent value, and secondly when Hevel brought there was no Avodah Zarah, Noach B'Tesum and Ateva Hikriv Karban, there was no one else around. Lo Hayu B'Zman Chayav Ov the Avodah Zarah, everyone else is killed, and yet Noach brought a Karban even though there was no Avodah Zarah around. And therefore, then we a little Bilam Hikriv Karban Hashem, etc. So the Ramban gives many examples, many questions on the Rambam's premise. The Rambam's premise is the purpose of karbanos is to weed one away from Avodah Zarah. He says that can't be. It's very difficult because we have Isha Reach Nichoach Hashem, Noach, Hevel, they all brought karbanos when there really wasn't Avodah Zarah. Hence the Ramban rejects the Rambam, and therefore he wants to give another answer. He says, Shetachlis HaKarbanos hu lechaper ala Adam. The purpose of karbanos is for atonement. And what you do to the carbon, what you do to the animal, basically what the Ramban is saying is really you should see yourself on the carbon. You should really, God, for what you did, you deserve to be killed. But God doesn't want you dead. He wants your ratzon. He just wants you to be wanting to serve Him. So if you give up, so by bringing the karbanos and you see what really should have happened to you, it will wake you up to the chesed, the loving kindness that God left you alive. Ule chesed Hashem she'amal havi karban t'muraso. And therefore, b'ofen hazeh adam makabel kapara. And therefore, a person gets forgiven because he realizes he does tshuva. He has a kares hatov that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved him. And in fact, that's what, as I point out, that the Hevel Hevi Gamhu, Hevel also brought himself. God isn't looking for to be appeased. He's looking for people to get close to Him. And that's what the word karban comes from, with karev, to get close to. And that's what the purpose of karbanos is. So it's a fundamental machlokes Rambam versus the Ramban on whether the purpose of karbanos is to wean one away from idol worship, or to it has inherent value to get closer to God. So the Abar Benel wants to answer up the Ramban's kash on the Rambam. The Ramban's kash on the Rambam is, how could you say it's for Avodah Zarah? We find it says Reach Nichoach and Hevel and Noach brought. So therefore, the Abar Benel wants to say Shebe'emes HaRambam lo made ha'ika shnei tamim b'shvil karbanos. There are really two reasons for karbanos. The Rambam doesn't always give the whole story in Moreh Nevuchim. He only gives part of the story. There are really two aspects to karbanos. One is l'kariv ha'adam l'boro, one is to get closer, like the Ramban writes. And secondly, k'dei laharchik ha'adam be'avodah zarah, to wean one away from idol worship. So why did the Rambam only bring the first one? Lama lo hevi Rambam atam harishon, about getting close to God. So the Barbanel says, "Meishahu sov she'ein ze ikir tachlis hakarbanos. V'yesh mitzvos acheres shatechisim l'karves adam." So the Barbanel says, and really the Rambam agrees that two aspects to karbanos: to wean oneself away from avodah zarah, as well as to get close to God. Alright, so why did the Rambam and more the Bukhim focus on the avodah zarah? Because he felt that's the main reason for the karban. And there are other mitzvahs. It's also as a secondary aspect of getting close to God, but you have other mitzvahs like tefillah, like davening, which does that purpose. So the Rambam is just focusing on what he thinks is the ikar reason, the primary reason for karbanos, but not the exclusive reason. And therefore he doesn't. And therefore he's saying he agrees to Rambam, but according to the Barbanel, the machlokas seems to be is what is the ikar. According to the Ramban, the ikar is the karban to get closer to God, its inherent value. And according to Rambam, the ikar is l'harchak adam min avodah zarah. So that's how the Barbanel tries to answer up. However, there's a famous Meshach Chochmah. The Meshach Chochmah in the beginning of Vayikra, he also at the end of and the Haftorah Pekudei has an interesting shtickle as well. He wants to be Marbe Shalom b'Yisrael. He wants to make peace between the Rambam and the Ramban. He wants to say really that there is no machlokas. They all agree. If they all agree, so why does the Rambam say the purpose of karbanos is to wean one away from avodah zarah? And according to the Ramban, the purpose is to get closer to Hashem. Hashem. So the Meshach Chochmah answers because there are two different types of karbanos. So the Meshach Chochmah writes about karbanos Beis HaMikdash. The karbanos, the sacrifices they used to bring in the Beis HaMikdash, b'vadei ba'am l'karev Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That the main purpose is to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe of a karbanos, maybe raya l'dvar midivrei harabag, she'omer she'oz bizman she'habamos m'toras ein behen karbanos. They don't, when there's bamas around us, they don't have their own kavanah to get closer to God. In other words, so basically, what the Meshach Chochmah is saying is the Ramban Nechman, and he says the purpose is to get closer to God. He says the purpose is karbanos is the ones that were given in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple. That was mainly given to get closer to Hashem. But when the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim talks about avodah zarah, he's talking about bamos. Bamos are things when the Beis HaMikdash was up, when you could bring karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash, you weren't allowed to bring a bama. But when you couldn't bring karbanos anymore, so you're allowed to bring a karban in your backyard, so to speak. So the Meshach Chochmah says, how do I know that the purpose of bama is to keep one away from avodah zarah? Because all his friends were worshipping idols. So the purpose of the karban was to let him bring the karban and bring it to Hashem. How do we see that? So he quotes many Gemaras, but one he quotes a Gemara in Zvachim, Kuf Yud Gimel, Ein reach nichoach b'bama ketana. There is no reach nichoach by a bama ketana mishum. The Einon Bos will karava adam Hashem. So he says, what's the pshat? There's no reich b'bama ketana, because bama ketana is to weed one away from avodah zarah, and not to come inherently closer. We owed another Gemara in the Darim, among other places, in the Darim Chav Beis Amud Aleph Amar Rav Nasan. Hano derekilu bana bama. When it makes a neder, it's like he's building a bama. Hainu, what does that mean? The one who takes a vow, it's like he's building a bama. Hainu Hashem shabama ba rach ligdoris adam avodah zarah. It's just like a bama is only coming to keep the Jewish people away from idol worship. Aval bizman shebeis hamikdash kayam. V'adam Yachol is karev Hashem b'beis hamikdash. So then one is no longer permitted to bring a bama. Kamo Kain, and no derotu gadaratz, he wants to make a fence around to make sure he doesn't bring a bama only when there's no Beis Hamikdash, when you can't bring a carbon. About shaharei kvar, because it's already made a fence around it. So to summarize, what is the purpose of Karbana? So we had the Barbanel, we had the Ramban and the Rambam, that all the people used to worship used to worship their animals, so therefore God said to bring them as a Karban and direct it and to him. The Barbanel says that no, that the Goyim used to bring Karbanos to their Avodah Zarah, so we didn't want them to go cold turkey, so continue doing what you're doing, but just redirect it to God. That's the Rambam, but whatever the explanation is, to keep one away from Avodah Zarah. You had the Ramban, what are you talking about? It says, Isha re'ach techolach Hashem, Hevel Noach brought Karbanos, so we see it doesn't to do with Avodah Zarah. And the Ramban says, carbon from the word kara, to get closer to God. So we have a machokas Ramban, whether the purpose is to get closer to God or to wean one away from idol worship. So the Baal now wants to answer up the question the Ramban has and the Rambam, and say the Rambam also agrees that there's a secondary aspect of getting closer, but the main function of Karbanos is to wean one away from Avodah Zarah, while the Ramban would say the main purpose of a Karban is to get closer to God. And the Meshech Chochmah also wants to make peace between the Rambam and the Ramban, and says the Ramban, which says Yishereach to get closer to God, that's Karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. But the Rambam, who says to wean one away from Avodah Zarah, that's talking about bamas. Ein re'ach tikolak b'bama ketana, like the Gemara says in Zvachim Kov Yud Gimel, or in the Daran Chav Beis Amanala, one who takes a neder, bama, that a bama is to guard against the fence. It's the fence not to worship idols, so therefore everyone else is worshiping idols around you, so you've got to bring a bama to God when there's no Beis Hamikdash. So there's a little introduction to the Sefer Vayikra and the Tachlis HaKarbanos. We'll go into more, perhaps different explanations as well, into the purpose of Karbanos as we go through the Parsha each week.